Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About It. This is Susan Johnson, and my co-host is out doing great things in the community this evening, so he won't be with us. But we have a fabulous guest, my colleague, State Representative Gregg Haddad, who does amazing work on the Higher Education Committee as the chairman, and amazing work for the town of Mansfield. So welcome to the show, Gregg.
Glad to be back with you again, Susan. It's always fun to come down here. I born and raised in Willimantic. I always say, even now, I have two hometowns. There's that town where I live in, and there's the town where I grew up, and that's Willimantic. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here. And also, I just want to say it's great to have you next door, the town next door, because you get what goes on in Windham. You also do a great job in Mansfield, and it's just great to have you as a partner here working in Eastern Connecticut, because Eastern Connecticut is different from the other part of the state.
Yes, it is. I mean, we're host to many higher education institutions, which is my area of expertise. And so you have a little sort of shop across the street with Quinebaug Valley Community College, now called Connecticut State Community College. You're host to Eastern Connecticut State University, of course, an institution that all three of my brothers graduated from. And
I graduated from.
Oh, excellent.
And my daughter and my son-in-law, just saying.
and now I'm up in Mansfield. We're the host community for UConn. And so it's a great, it's a special part of this part of the state, I think, that we host so many educational institutions. Of course, we have a lot of nonprofit around here, a lot of nonprofits, and that with our hospitals, I think, are our major sort of industries. But I appreciate Willimantic and its downtown and all that it has to offer to our region, and so I'm glad to come back.
Yes, well, I'm glad to have you here, and I know that your work is really, really important to the higher education facilities that we have here and the students that attend Eastern Connecticut State University, of course, UConn, and Quinebaug Valley, which is now the Connecticut State Community College, which I'm thrilled that we're back on Main Street with that. And, of course, we have numerous other educational facilities that I'll just have to say, because we have the fire school, we have two magnet schools. We have an arts magnet school, and we have a magnet school for science and technology. We have, the tech school. And, one of the things that we're looking forward to is working with Windham Hospital, because they're going to create a nursing school around here. So I'm really excited about doing that. They've been doing that, working with Anna Handley and president at Eastern Connecticut State University. All are working on creating nursing school educational opportunities here. So it's going to be a great way, because we are faced with a huge shortage for nursing services.
Yeah, actually, and also Connecticut State University, Connecticut State Community College is starting a new LPN program again, reinvigorating a program that lied dormant for a while, and they're starting it here, piloting it right here at Quinebaug as well. And so, healthcare is one of those areas where there's a significant labor shortage. I think that we need to do more to encourage young people to go into that field. It turns out to be a great return on investment if they go and get those credentials, whether it's an LPN or an RN or a variety of other health-related fields. In fact, I was just at a press conference last week with Governor Lamont, where he was announcing an $11 million initiative to do student loan repayments for recent graduates who are committed to living here for 2 years and have entered a number of different medical fields. I see you have some information about it as well. I mean, a great program, but it's really intended to help us with retention, so that once you earn a credential, you know that you can spend some time at a Connecticut institution, a Connecticut facility, helping Connecticut residents, and then you'll qualify for this the student loan repayment program. It's $25,000 a year. For $50,000 as a maximum. The state is currently accepting applications to the program. They just opened earlier this week. Somewhere there, we should actually probably find the web address, but I think it's through the Department of Public Health, and you can apply for the grant. And then once you're in the program, you have to do your 2 years of service, and then you'll be eligible for the reimbursement. But it's a great student loan repayment program, which is particularly helpful, I think, for areas of the state like ours that are also not just in a state that's overall challenged with a lack of healthcare providers, but particularly challenged out here in Eastern Connecticut, as consolidation has led to fewer and fewer places to go to receive health care, and there's fewer and fewer employers doing that sort of thing, and so it's particularly helpful, I think, to attract people to the healthcare fields here in Eastern Connecticut, where we need it even more than other parts of the state.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. They have such a great area to live in here in Eastern Connecticut. It's beautiful, and we have all the kinds of things that you might need to live a wonderful life. But we really need to make sure that we support the services that we've been enjoying all these years. And there has been a little bit of a change in terms of the people who have decided whether or not to go into nursing or these other healthcare industries. Plus, the cost of education has been something that's been a real problem. And I think that's been part of the reason that we're looking at the shortage now. So we really need to step up. There was a time when I had President Elsa Nunez, here on the show, and we were talking about how the state used to provide between 60 and 70% for the cost of the university systems, and now they're down to about 30%?
30 or 45%, depending on how you count it. Yeah, and at UConn, it's actually far less. I mean, most people would be surprised to learn that UConn, the percentage that the state pays for is down to only 19%, and that drops to just 14% when you take away the one-time revenues that we're sharing with them. So in terms of a sustainable, ongoing commitment, it's only 14% at UConn. I think it's only 25% at our state universities, slightly higher for our community colleges. That's an area that we've been working really hard on. Myself, I know you've been very supportive. State Senator May Flexer have been fighting to preserve a baseline level of state commitment to our public universities. Public universities, and the community colleges especially, are great points of access for post-secondary education for many students who otherwise would not be able to afford to go to college at all. And as probably the most under-resourced part of the state, where families face lower family income than in much of the rest of the state, it's particularly important to make sure that we have pathways into post-secondary education that really pay off for people.
I've been absolutely thrilled with the work that you've done on that with the community colleges. Tell us a little bit about the people who qualify for a free community college.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm probably most proud of.
You should be. It's a wonderful
legislator,
program.
and it was 20 years in the making.
Yes.
I have to say, when I first started, as a junior staffer at the state capitol, I worked for an amazing woman whose name was Marianne Handley. She just passed away last October.
I'm sorry about that.
And I worked with her for 4 years, and she really introduced me to the community college system as a place where access is really most important. But we also find that the students who go to community college are oftentimes, very marginal. They're challenged in a number of ways to both pay for tuition and take care of, families at home. Oftentimes they have kids at home. They're more apt to be non-traditional students, meaning not just between 18 and 22. They're more apt to be lower income levels. They're more apt to be first-generation students, and so the community colleges serve a very particular population, and for many of them, if community college didn't stay affordable, they would not be able to go to post-secondary education. So it was just, I think, 5 or 6 years ago that we passed what's called the PACT program, which is a program that guarantees that most students who go to community college can go debt-free. And that means that once you've accepted whatever federal funding is available for you through a federal Pell Grant, you've looked at other scholarships, that sort of thing. That once you've put all of the additional, the first dollar scholarships that you can find into your payments, the state will cover the difference. So folks who are eligible right now are people who have graduated from a Connecticut high school. That's the last remaining hurdle that we're hoping to remove. But currently, you have to be part-time. You have to be taking at least 6 credits. You have to be looking to seek a degree or a first-time degree at a community college, and then you're eligible for the program. You can apply through the financial aid office, and you'll more likely than not be granted the debt-free community college. Those grants now are actually going to be named after Mary Ann Handley. That's something that we did this year.
Oh, that's great. She was a lovely lady.
You'll receive a Mary Ann Handley Award, and that will cover the difference between what you can marshal from federal grants and other private sources and what you need to go to college debt-free. And this year we increased, there's a minimum grant award, and that's particularly important for really, really poor students. One thing that we were aware of is that, for a lot of these students, it's not always just the tuition that makes it difficult to go to college. It's also, what it takes to buy books, what it takes to get back and forth to campus, what it takes to sort of maybe pay for some childcare at home while you're trying to earn your degree. And so we have a minimum grant award. It's it used to be, I've got the numbers here someplace. It used to be $150 per semester. That's increasing to $300 per semester for a part-time student, and it's going from $250 to $500 for a full-time student. And that's money that we'll give you to take care of the other incidentals. At a 4-year institution, a lot of that stuff is already financed. You're living in a dorm, or you're paying for your food plan through your university bill. Because those opportunities aren't available to you at a community college, we're making these minimum grant awards, and it really does help make a huge difference.
That's so thoughtful. And I have to say that one of the things that we really, really need is we need the students to go through those community college systems, because depending on which community college you go to, they provide an academic credential that will get you to work in some places like Electric Boat or Pratt & Whitney or, over Sikorsky Aircraft. Some of these jobs, when students finish, they're paying them a really good salary. And so this is, and by the way, we have to fill those positions because people are retiring at huge amounts every single year. And if we don't watch out and we don't fill those positions, then they may not stay here in Connecticut. And they are a huge opportunity base for our tax base, for our United States government. These are things that we have to do to protect our society here in America. So we need to make sure here we're providing that student support so they can get out there and do these jobs.
Yeah, a lot of employers are growing in Connecticut.
Yes.
And so you see that particularly in the defense industry, but also in other places. And when we go out and talk to HR professionals at our employers, both with big corporate citizens, but also smaller businesses that are in the supply chain for those businesses, or new businesses, a big primary concern is whether or not they're going to find the skilled workforce that they need in order to grow here. And a place like Electric Boat, it's interesting. They feel like they could recruit people from other parts of the country to come and work here. They invest a lot in training those folks, but because of our climate, because we have cold, chilly New England weather, they're less confident that once those employees get trained and work here for 5 years, that they can keep them here. In other words, folks from other parts of the country come here, they get trained, they get skills, and then they go back to their home states to work. But they feel like if they can find an indigenous workforce that's used to New England, is from New England, and train them, then they feel like they can really sort of make a long-term commitment to our state. And that's, I think, the least we can do to some of our major industries. So that's what we'll do.
That is great, and it kind of fits in with what we've been talking about that we've been doing here in Eastern Connecticut with the pipeline to these different businesses. So
Yes, pipeline issues are really critical and very important, and that's where the community colleges, they're really at the front lines of working with local businesses to sort of come up with specific skills that their employees might need. They do, yeah. What's sort of unsung about the community colleges is how willing they are to work with local industry to help come up with a credential or a badge or a certificate program that helps employees of our businesses sort of skill up to accomplish the work that's required by the business. And we work very hard to make sure that those credentials, sometimes it's a badge, sometimes it's a certificate, that can be stackable. That you can start getting those courses, earn that certificate, but then maybe just earn a couple more credits to earn an associate's degree. And then you've got an associate's degree under your belt. And then once that's done, you can take more credits and maybe earn a bachelor's degree. And so we try to align the curriculum as much as possible to keep students on a path to sort of greater educational attainment. And that helps not just the employers, but also helps those individuals, because we know that their earning potential will increase significantly as they continue to earn those degrees and move up the stairs. And so it's really making sure that our the academic offerings at our institutions are aligning with what employers need, and meeting student needs.
I mean, when I first got to the Capitol, that was one of the big complaints that we had, is that the academic institutions weren't aligning with the businesses that we have here in the state. And I'm so thrilled to see that we have the pipeline. We're aligning with the different businesses, and of course now we have huge amounts of increases in technology, and so making sure that the students going through our systems actually get that background in technology, because it's really moving such a huge quick rate that we need to make sure we keep up to date, because technology is zooming along. No pun intended, I think.
Yeah, I was just at a conference where we were talking about particularly those core competencies required for nursing.
Yes.
And how much they've shifted over the last 15 years. And in the last 15 years, they said that every 5 years, a substantial part of the core competencies required to be a nurse have changed as well. And it is difficult, I think, in academia sometimes to change curriculums that quickly to keep pace with what's happening in the private sector and in the real world. And so that is still, I think, a challenge that we need to continue to stay vigilant on and help our institutions sort of move more quickly. To sort of realign their curriculum and make that relevant. If that core curriculum, if you think about it, is changing that quickly and that it's significantly different on 5-year cycles, then what we're really talking about is that a student who enters college and works for sometimes 4.5 or 5 years to earn a degree, that the curriculum is completely changed during that 5-year period. And so it's very challenging to sort of keep pace, but it's certainly critical for our institutions. And that's why I think that we need to continue to reinvest in our public institutions as well. And during the economic downturn in Connecticut, when we're struggling with long-term deficits, and we began to pay off our long-term debt, which is critically important to have a sound financial underpinning for our state. One of the things that I think suffered was our investment in public higher education. It has really stayed flat now for about 10 years. And so while I don't think that they've lost significant ground, they certainly have not gained ground, and it has become more and more difficult as their cost has increased, for them to pay the difference. And that has put a lot of pressure on tuition
Absolutely.
and on students.
And that is part of the problem that we're faced with now, because we have a lot of people who don't understand how the budget works and how we've been very successful at making sure we're paying down our debt. But at the same time, we've put a lot of so-called guardrails. Sometimes I like to refer to them as straitjackets, because we need to have flexibility flexibility. I'm not saying I'm absolutely for paying down the debt because eventually it's going to lead to more space in under the spending cap, which is something that was put into existence when Lowell Weicker was the governor. And it was something where back in the day when he was the governor, all the distressed municipality money, for example, was outside the cap, which meant that you had more room inside the spending cap, which allowed you to take care of a lot of these things we're talking about here with the students and the tuition. And so then what happened is we got into that situation during COVID in 2017 where more things were added to put limitations on spending. Revenue cap, bonding cap, these are the kinds of things that we're dealing with now. And these are in statute. They can be adjusted. And they should be adjusted because we need to make sure at the same time we pay our debt, we also make progress with education. We also make progress to make sure we don't have the poverty that we're faced with right now. We want to make sure that we do the infrastructure development that we're supposed to do to make sure that when businesses come here, that they have places and they don't have to worry about transportation and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of different things that we have to do to keep up. So we need to have more flexibility. We're not in the same spot we were in 2017, or even when I first got there in 2009 and was sworn in there, and where we had no money at all. When I got in there in 2009, after Governor Rowland and Rel were the governors, they left us with a huge no rainy day fund, a lot of debt that had never been paid down. We were there with that kind of thing, and part of the reason is because we had the spending cap, we didn't have any directions on what to do with it. And so instead of making sure that we were in a situation where, okay, you've got the spending cap, but we got a little extra money, pay down the debt. Okay. But we didn't do that back when Rowland was the governor and when Rel was the governor. And so now some of these things, like the bonding cap and those kinds of things, and the requirement that we pay the debt down if we get a huge increase in revenue we hadn't anticipated, those are things that, sure, that's fine. But we also have to make sure we're going to take care of the students, we're going to take care of the people here in the state of Connecticut, and live the life that, people expect you to live when you're in Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with much of what you say. When, it's important for people to understand that with our pension system, for example, from the 1920s or 30s when it was instituted all the way through the 1990s and a little bit past, the state sort of thought of it as a pay-as-you-go kind of a system. And if you have growing population and a growing number of state employees and a growing economy, maybe you can mask that bad decision. But when those things aren't true, and they certainly became not true for not just for Connecticut, but for all of New England, it really exposes those bad decisions. And so we had huge unfunded pension liabilities that was accumulated really in the 30s and the 40s and 50s into the middle decades, the end of the first century, and into the beginning of the 2000s. And so when I joined the legislature in 2011, just after you, you're right. We were faced with almost an insurmountable problem. The bill was coming due. Too much money had been put on the credit card, and we needed some guidelines to put us on the right path. And so, fortunately, I think Governor Malloy also had a similar mindset. And so the new Democratic majorities in both the House and the Senate, together with the first Democrat who we had been elected in decades, began to impose these new guidelines and this new fiscal discipline. And that was a very positive thing. Now we have our house in order. We've begun to pay down our long-term pension liabilities to the tune of billions of dollars a year. We are making extra payments to those payments above and beyond what we are required to make. We have a very full rainy day fund. And we continue to have surpluses. But now I think those guardrails, those guidelines, as you were talking about, the guardrails, have gotten to be a little too restrictive. I think that when we adopted guardrails, we intended it to keep us on the straight and narrow. But now they've turned, in some instances, into roadblocks. When I think about our investment in public higher education, or I think about our investment in our nonprofit community, which has done so much for the state because they provide services that would otherwise be required to be provided by the state. to vulnerable populations across Connecticut. We have to keep pace with what their costs are. We have to keep pace with what's going on at our institutions of higher education, or we risk losing the quality that the services that they provide, and that's something that I think is untenable. We can't turn off opportunity for students in Connecticut to get a higher education, because that's the path for continued prosperity for the state and for those individuals as well. And it's just, frankly, inhumane to stop providing adequate services to the most vulnerable people in our society. Kids, little children who are in daycares, our most vulnerable elderly citizens who are in nursing homes, and people with intellectual or developmental disabilities who are being cared for in group homes and different programs across the state of Connecticut. Critically important work that we need to maintain. And so if we can't make investments that we know are warranted and needed, with surplus money that is in our budget after we filled the rainy day fund, then it seems to me that the guardrails have gone a little bit awry. And so I'm certainly open to adding some flexibility and making sure that when we make smart decisions, that we can make decisions that are really best for everybody in Connecticut, without going too far off of the path of fiscal responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it's so important for us to be able to take another look, analyze where we are, make sure we make those payments and continue to pay that debt down. But at the same time, make sure we take care of the people who are here, the little ones in daycare, like you said. That is such an important issue, to make sure we have access to daycare so people can go to work. And of course, in Eastern Connecticut, we're in one of the daycare deserts. I mean, we really don't have the access to early childhood education that we really need this way, to make sure everybody has access so they can go and work and be part of that pipeline, or become health professionals or people who take care of other people in nonprofit organizations. These are all things that we have to do, and we are really going to be looking forward to making sure we pay the debt, but also take care of the people at the same time. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with my very special guest this evening, Representative Gregg Haddad, and we will be right back after these messages. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with our very special guest this evening, Representative Gregg Haddad, who is our neighbor here. He's a state representative for Mansfield, and I'm so happy to have him as the neighbor representative, because we do a lot of work together. And one of the things that we've worked on is making sure that more money goes back to the towns that serve the state. And one of the things that I always say about the town of Windham and the town of Mansfield is, because we have these university systems here, we're serving the state.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we have a tremendous number of visitors from across the state and even further beyond the state who come to our region to get educated, and we do a lot of work for them. Right before the break, we were talking about budget choices, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it seems to me that when that municipal aid, which is money that the state provides to local municipalities to help pay for good schools, to help make sure that we have great services in our municipalities, and helps hold down property taxes, critically important. If we retract or retreat from those commitments on municipal aid, what happens, right? Oftentimes the local property taxes go up.
That's right. And that's something I don't think people fully understand. They don't understand. People have approached me, not just from here, but from other places when I go around the state. And they say, gee, my property taxes are so high. But then that you take a look at all the services that they're providing that the state, has really a responsibility for. Yeah. Public education is one of them. That's in the Constitution. The state's supposed to do that. University systems, that's a state duty. So this is something that they need to step up. The state does. And one of the things I'm absolutely thrilled to be working with you on is making sure that we're recognized for that good work. I call us serving communities, and we need a good tip.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and so there's a variety of different it's that partnership between the state and municipalities that's really really important, right? And I really think it has to be a partnership.
Yes.
There are certain things that the state delegates to local municipalities. Running the school systems is chief among them, right? I mean, what an expensive proposition for our local community to do. There's nothing more expensive in your local budget than schools, and so it becomes critically important for us to do what we can to stay a good partner and to provide resources to communities based on need to pay for those good schools. And so, I know that I was looking at the numbers that we are bringing back to our local districts this year and increased ECS of money. Because now that we've got our fiscal house in order and we are seeing some growth, allowable growth under the spending cap. Last year, we made a huge commitment to the ECS Educational Cost Share Program, in excess of $100 million. I think it's more like $150 million of new money being put into that grant program so that we could be a stronger partner with local communities in providing for their schools.
And I just wanted to chime in on that one because that is such a huge, huge thing for us. For not, back in the day, we're not getting the full education cost sharing grant. Half the towns were getting a little more. The other half were getting less. Mm-hmm. And our town was getting less. And to be able to increase the amount. Now, this happened back in 2017 where we started making a deal with everybody. Of course, the deals can break after 2 years. They get the new cycle. But we did make a deal to project to make sure every single town was going to be fully funded under the education cost sharing grant. And now here we are. Because when I first started, back in 2009, we were getting about $24 million. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to get $33,829,263 as of 2025, and that is almost that's the whole $10 million really that we were missing. Mm-hmm. But we had to do it gradually, mm-hmm. and now all the districts are being funded in accordance with that education cost sharing grant that was put together by the Horton versus Meskel case back in the 70s and 80s because it had to go twice. And then when Weicker became governor, there was a spending cap, and then we kind of lost. Nobody else was suing anymore, and then there was a Sheff versus O'Neill case. But anyway, so that is one of the things that I am absolutely thrilled about to meet the requirements of the education cost sharing grant is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers earlier today because our nonpartisan Office of Fiscal Analysis has this great dashboard where you can go to and look at the numbers for different communities, and so you should be proud because you'll get a $2 million increase from last year to this year in ECS formula. Our community also gets a little over $2 million. Your community from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 25, which goes back just 5 years now, goes from 28.9 to $33.8 million. That's a tremendous help to school kids here in Windham and your school administrators and all those folks who are struggling to provide a good, strong, quality education to students in your schools. We've gone from $9.4 million up to $11.8 million. Not as large an increase as you've been able to get for Willimantic and Windham, Susan, but we're very proud of it. And our community is both, when you include all of the state aid formulas, which includes things like pilot and some one-time ARPA payments and other resources that we're providing, have both experienced over a $3 million increase from last year to this year in the amount of aid that's provided by the state to help our communities fund good schools.
I just want to say
really
something
important
about the payment in lieu of taxes pilot money, which is something that we were always. I remember when I was on the council, we're always lamenting the fact that what is going on with payment in lieu of taxes. Mm-hmm. What is the problem? And it would go up, it would go down, it was all around. And of course, being about 25,000 people here in Windham, having all these responsibilities is for the state here, whether it's public housing or the universities or the hospitals or the nursing facilities or FQ, federally qualified health centers. All these things that we do for the state and for the region, the 3 homeless shelters, these are things that, we struggled mightily with the up and down payment for pilot. And then what happened? The towns that had these services that they provide to the state, to the region, they went and got together, and Marty Looney somehow found out about it, because I think the meetings were in New Haven with Mayor Elliker, and we got the 3-tiered pilot system, which is something that Dennis O'Brien, my co-host, husband-in-law partner, actually went around the state working on making sure that there was a more equity in terms of how pilot money was distributed. And they went according to the income of the town. They went according to how much service and how many state properties and non-taxable properties there are in the town. And that's part of the reason towns like ours are getting a little bit more and a little more stability, because you've got Tier 1, which we're in here in Wyndham, and then Tier 2, which are towns that don't have as much, and Tier 3, towns that don't even have very much at all. But back in the day, there were towns that didn't have anything, and they were getting pilot money for no reason, which I said, I'm going to have to work on that. They said, oh, boy.
So and I agree. We're a Tier 1 in town as well, and what was happening is that there wasn't enough money again because money was so tight as we're wrestling with budget deficits and long-term liabilities, and so when the pool of money gets smaller and smaller, it just gets harder to fairly distribute that money to the places that need it most. And so the tiered system really allows us to concentrate on those communities that are, most need that money, and that once their pot gets filled, then we can go on to making smart choices for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns. So, it's worked out really well.
Yes, it has. It's been an excellent change
for us, and I think it's really important. And it's also speaks to a greater need, which is, our property tax system in Connecticut is, it's a challenging system. Property taxes are very unforgiving because they're not based on what a person earns, but rather on what they have. And so if you're a low-income senior who's living on a fixed income and you're in retirement, but you bought a big house when you were working, it really encourages you to move out. And I don't think that's really what how we want to treat seniors. And so we have a tendency to sort of over-focus on property taxes, I think. It certainly has a place in our system of taxation, but I think that we need to do better. And I prefer this sort of income-based taxation that we can do at the state level. And so if we can fairly collect taxes based on income, and then share some of that money with municipalities so that they can rely less on a regressive property tax system, I think we've done a good job at sort of making sure that we're good partners with municipalities, funding the services that are required to be funded by local municipalities, but also not unduly burdening people at the lower incomes of the income scales too much when there are folks in Fairfield County, frankly, who can afford to pay so much more to our state. And so it's really, I think, worked out particularly well for Eastern Connecticut to sort of focus on this. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to accomplish this and investing more money into both the pilot program and ECS as a way of making sure that communities have the resources they need to provide great services.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, I think we could do is we should be able to fully fund the services that we have. For example, special education, it's a $1.6 billion cost to the local communities right now, statewide. If we put that $1.6 billion into the special education and gave it right straight to the local education systems, then that would be another burden that would be released, making the pilot the three-tiered pilot, which is I'm thrilled with. But if we made it, say, 100% of what the property tax rate was, that would really reduce people's property taxes.
Sure.
So these are the kinds of things. Education cost sharing grant. Take another look at it. Maybe the formula needs to be updated, and take a look and see whether or not that would be something where we should be providing to all the communities a little bit more money. And so these are the kinds of things that I think that we really have to take a look at. If you want to reduce the property tax, the state needs to come in and provide the subsidies for the town, for the things that the state really should be paying for in the first place, the things that maybe the state used to pay for. And then over time, because of financial problems, we stop paying for them, or we reduce the amount. And then what happens is then the property taxes go up, and people are there, why are the property taxes going up? Well, the state subsidy is one big reason. And to really fully understand that is really important. And it really gets back to the guardrails. Yeah. Because the guardrails maintain what we are doing, but they're not looking at trying to make the property taxes go down. And if you're providing services like Mansfield provides, like Wyndham provides, all these services we provide, and other towns don't do these things that we do, then we really need to take a look at how that is. And you can't just say, oh, well, it's okay for them to provide these services and them to have the higher taxes in Mansfield and Wyndham, when in fact we are providing a service for the whole state.
Yeah, in other states they have county government. We don't have any county government here, and so in other states some of these responsibilities are shared by a whole layer of government that we don't have here. And so and as a result, decision making is often made in very small school districts and very small municipalities. And so when it comes to something like special education, right, it's interesting because, there's a lot of money sometimes is required to provide special education services to a single student or a very small group of students. That's federally mandated. And so there's not much we can do about it. It's worked out. But when a student moves, 400 yards from one municipality to another, that cost shifts with them too, and it can result in wild swings in what a local community is required to sort of provide to their school system, and so those special education costs are significant enough that I'm convinced that you're right, that we need to figure out a way for the state to be a stronger partner and to lift that burden off of the shoulders of a local municipality, and that parents of those students and those students themselves who deserve that education can get the services they need without having to worry about what town they live in, or whether or not a cash-strapped community is going to fight them on providing those services, or whether or not it can really afford to provide those services at all.
Well, yes,
so
you make an excellent.
It's really important.
Yeah, you make an excellent point there about whether they can afford to provide them at all, because what happens is they have to evaluate the student. And if they don't have enough teachers and enough people working in the school because they're cash-strapped, and they don't have the smaller classrooms, they just don't have the people that they need to do this analysis for a special needs child, then the special needs child might go right straight through school. They might, just be making it, but, they're not failing out or anything. But if they had that addressed, if they had that special education addressed while they were, in school, then they probably could do excellent work and just, go right from there to some post-secondary type, education or work, and lead a very healthy life. But because we're shortchanging special education, we are in need of really doing a good analysis. Now, the Education Committee I'm pleased to say, has had a new special education task force to try and address these difficulties that the state has had. And by the way, you talk about other states, they don't do this. They give direct funding to the local communities. But this particular special education law was put together by Governor Meskel. And he wanted to make sure that he limited access to special education. But this is back in the 1970s when people didn't really understand how the brain works. And all the new things that we know about how we can get kids to do good stuff academically is just fabulous. And it will be something that we can do, and we get the kids moved through and have them have a great education. We're running down to our last minute, Greg. Some last words from you?
Well, I enjoy being your partner of the state capitol. I mean, we have a great contingent of legislators from Eastern Connecticut, and I'm proud to serve with you. And I'm glad to be on your show at any time. So maybe I'll come back and we can talk more about these issues. But I enjoy my time spent with you, Susan.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed having you here as a guest, and it's wonderful to have this conversation. This is Susan Johnson, and I'm here with Gregory Haddad, State Representative from Mansfield. We had a great show. And we look forward to seeing you next week in a brand new show.